Hey everybody, I'm Kathy Klotz-Guest with Keeping It Human, and welcome to the Improv and Innovation Cafe. It's been a few weeks, and as always, I like to chat with some really smart, fun people that are improvisers, and they're bringing their toolbox to work with them, and they're helping companies and teams and people become better communicators and storytellers. And it just so happens that part of the way they get there is through improv. So I'm really excited today to talk to our guest, Sammy Wegent, and he is the creator of Speechless, and the website is speechlesslive.com. And I'm going to actually give Sammy a chance to explain it because I know he'll explain it much better than I do. In a couple of sentences, Sammy, tell people what Speechless is all about.
Speechless is a live show and also a training system that is fueling PowerPoint presentations through the beauty and wonderful art form that is improv. So that's my explanation of it.
I love it. And I love when you go to the website, it says presentation is everything. And it is true.
It is.
It is so true. And you and I know, because we've probably sat in every bad meeting that's ever happened. And I read a statistic the other day that just made me laugh out loud. It was something to the effect of there are 350 million. I don't know how they quantify this. Numbers can be made up, but it said there are 350 million, approximately 350 million meetings that happen every day in corporate America. And I thought, you know, at one time or another, I've probably sat in most of those, and and they have prematurely aged me.
Yes.
And so I love your tagline of presentation is everything.
Fingers in my beard.
Yeah, yes, you and me both. It's like I'm coloring my hair because of the time that I can't get back from those meetings. And I love that you have a philosophy on Speechless on the website that you look at every person who's a speaker and you say, you know what, there's an inner performer. Let's make sure they understand that, you know, they become the best performer they can be, and they become engaging. So tell us a little bit about how Speechless started. What are the origins?
I would say the seed of the idea came from, in 2008, I did a stand-up show that had multimedia in it that was called Hell to the Chief, and it was kind of poking fun at the current election and also at our disdain for whoever we choose and why that system is broken. You know, it's kind of like my one-person version of a Daily Show or Colbert-style show where I was doing jokes, but on the screen, I had my best friend, Justin Lamb, who's an amazing improviser out of New York, but also he's a graphic designer. He helped me create about 120 PowerPoint slides that had kind of visual jokes on them. And that was the first time I had ever dabbled with on stage, having PowerPoint up and seeing the power it could have with like a joke that pops up on screen, the audience laughs at that, and then you're improvising or telling a scripted joke off of it. So in 2008, that's where I got my feet wet. Fast forward to the last 4 years, I've worked at a company called Zynga that does video games for originally Facebook, and now it's on mostly mobile. And I basically have to sit through all these PowerPoint presentations on a daily basis because that's how we convey everything, because video games are complicated enough, and you have to kind of mock up little slides that say, okay, this character is going to go here, and this is what happens when they tap here. And most of them are so long that that's what makes them funny to me. Like sometimes I get PowerPoint decks in an email that we're going to go through later in the day, and it's literally like 173 slides or something. And so it's just funny how tedious they are. And I know this is probably true in every industry, but in my time working here, I've sat through a lot of them where people had so many slides, they had no idea what were on the next, not just the next slide, but the next 30 slides. And so they're just scrambling for, why did I do that? And what does that mean? And I don't know what that acronym stands for. And that's where kind of like the seed of the idea came from, just watching really bad presentations at work. And as a comedian and improviser, just kind of internally laughing about it, and also cooking up in my head just the idea of like, what if this was done by comedians? What if comedians got up there and poked fun at presentations and did fake ones? Or what if they got up there and maybe it was people from the, you know, the corporate world as well, doing presentations they'd never seen before. Like, it was just a funny idea to me if people got up and tried to give a talk, but they didn't know what the talk was going to be.
Yeah. It is a heck of a lot of fun. I mean, it is genius. It's comedy gold, my friend. You have struck comedy gold. And it is just, because we've all sat in those meetings where we're like, you know, it just kills me that the presenter, as you totally aptly described, they don't know how many more slides are left. They have to stop the presentation because they didn't put a denominator, like, you know, a numerator and denominator of how many, you know, they're on number 30 of 60. And then you're like, oh my God, 30, we're almost done. And they go, oh no, it's 30 of like 60 or 70. And you're like, shoot me in the head, please. And it's painful, and it's just, it is comical. And we've gotten really sort of way over reliant, I think, a lot of us on slides. And it's almost like, and you show this so well in your slide that, like, if you took away somebody's crutch, could they do it? And that's what I love about what you do, is you mix it up, and you have to be able to tell a story, any story, to whatever slides up. And but long before I knew even about Speechless, years ago at a conference that I spoke at in New York, a bunch of us got together for cocktail hour, and somebody came up with the idea of, hey, what if we gave each other's presentations? And we actually swapped slides. So it was sort of similar to Speechless in the sense of, you know, you were presenting slides that you didn't create and had never seen before. Yeah. And so a bunch of us that had improv backgrounds got up and did it, and it was just a blast. And so I think everybody should do this at least once. I think it will make you a better speaker. That's my sense of it.
Yeah, it's an adrenaline rush. It's so funny because you have we're doing the show Friday night at the Improv Festival with, you know, very seasoned performers. Yeah. And the first time a couple of them did the show, they were terrified. You have these people that have performed thousands of times, and they're afraid and a little bit excited to do the show because it's just something different. They say things like, I've never actually given a real talk. I've never had a real job. I've never held a presentation remote. And then on the other side of the fence, you have people that give presentations on a daily basis. They've never done it for fun, and they've never tried to make people laugh with it. And so it merges everyone together. It really levels the playing field. And that's what I love about it, is that everyone comes to it with the same amount of experience doing it. Not necessarily the things that it's a kind of a mashup of, but doing it. Almost no one has any experience doing it. And that's what makes it, I think, easier for people who are not necessarily seasoned performers to go, hey, I'll do that, because we have an audience volunteer always in the show. And I the first time we ever had an audience volunteer, or that be a component of the show, I was nervous that no one would want to do it. And ever since the first time I think the second show ever is when we started that, we've always had people who were just clamoring to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It's so strange to me.
And it's fun. And what I really loved is that both the times I've seen it, the audience volunteer embraces it with such commitment, which is beautiful, that it's hilarious, because the commitment they bring to just embracing the spirit of what it is so great. That is pretty darn funny. And the last time at Funny Business, I got to tell you, I was teasing Drew. I said, that volunteer, and he does have a comedy background, actually, I said, gave you a run for your money. And he goes, I know. And they are, you know, I love everything about it. And I'm curious because, you know, we kind of joked a little bit before going live today that, you know, nobody ever says, hey, I have an improv problem. My improv is broken. Come in and help me fix my improv. And yet we both know as performers that improv and improvisation really helps us be in the present and the spirit of what we're trying to do and be better communicators. So my question for you is, what are the communication challenges that with your training you think Speechless really addresses? Where do you see it make the biggest difference in the people that you work with?
I think it makes the biggest difference, first and foremost, in giving people permission to be themselves at work. Which is a very strange thing to think about people not being. But in the work environment, a lot of people are playing a role. And maybe you and I have done this as well. I'm guilty of it, because you work in a culture where you're not completely yourself because of a myriad of factors. But that's the first and foremost, the biggest impact I think that we make, is we say, hey, no one's going to complain if this presentation you give is more entertaining, has more information about who you are, has a good story in it. You tell a joke in the beginning. You inspire us. Like, there's actual emotion in it. Like, no one is going to get upset if your really boring 173 slide presentation is entertaining and they like it. And so that's the biggest thing is we want to go in because we work with people in a variety of ways, whether it's one-on-one or in big groups for a half day or a weekend, or even a team of people that we maybe train up toward a conference for weeks on end, and we do everything in between. The main thing is we want them to know that they can be themselves, that they're enough, just like anyone else. That's what I love about improv is anyone can do improv. You're already doing it right now. You've been doing it your entire life. And it's okay to be you. Whatever it is about you that's different than this person, then let that be a part of what you do at work. Let that be a part of your presentation. If you love a particular movie or TV show, maybe you make those pop culture references. If you're a geology expert, maybe you make analogies about it throughout. I don't know. Like find ways to make kind of your own visual language, your own verbal language too, through metaphor, simile, and analogies, and be playful. Be you. Tell us why you're the person giving the talk. And the main thing I always tell people is I say, because this is true in most cases, just like I use my example at work, most of the time when people give a presentation, they send out the deck before they do the presentation so everyone can kind of know what they're in for. Then they use the same deck in the presentation, and afterward they resend it out just to make sure everyone has it. So you're basically getting the same 173 slides 3 times. I don't know how many slides that is off the top of my head. That's a lot of slides. But it's like, so take the opportunity to take the stage and have a little mystery and give a little surprise to what you're going to do. Don't let it be just about what the presentation is, and know that the audience already knows what you're going to talk about. You already let them see the presentation. That's like you doing a one-person show or a stand-up act and you email the audience your jokes. Why would you do that? And if you're going to do that, which is a strange idea, maybe have some new jokes when you show up. And in their case, in the business world, it's not necessarily jokes. It's maybe a new story, maybe a new slide that envisions and visualizes this concept in a different way. Like, let there be a little bit of fun and creativity and mystery to it.
Yeah, so true. Such music to my ears. And it just cracks me up. I don't know what it is. And even with people who I think really have that big, bold personality in a corporate setting, there's something about a switch goes off in their heads. And it happens sometimes where because the environment is corporate, all of a sudden, like, you know, Ms. or, you know, Mr. Corporate person steps up to, you know, the stage versus the human being. And I don't know why that is. It's kind of like when we sit down to write a blog post. It's like very funny people I know will sit down and all of a sudden they're like, well, what not and henceforth and like Shakespeare. And I'm like, who writes like this? You know, what do you,
alas,
you know,
the Kardashians came forth.
Exactly. And
well, I think every medium has a voice, right? Like we're working with a client right now who's doing a live demo at a conference for her company, and I'm telling her in all of our rehearsals that she's falling back into demo voice. And I think that that's true for everything. When I first started doing stand-up and I first started teaching it, I would tell people that, like, you're doing an impression of a comedian instead of being yourself telling jokes or telling your material. And I think that every performance medium, no matter what it is, has a voice. Like if you were to enact a preacher doing a sermon, I bet the two of us would probably closely match the same type of characterization, just because that's what we think of. If I was to say, do an infomercial or do a TED Talk, like all of these types of performances, people go, oh, that's how they sound. And now with, you know, keynotes and you know, Steve Jobs making them so infamous, for better or for worse, everyone in conference world sounds a particular way. But then even within like small conference rooms where you're giving a presentation, no one takes chance. That's another big thing where it comes from the world of improv, is that don't be afraid to fail, right? Like these companies that we work with, and we don't just work with companies where we are, but a lot of them are in the entrepreneurial world of like, fail fast and learn from your failures. And they practice that in their businesses, but in their performances, they don't, because they're trying to do everything perfectly. And that's what I love about improv, is that the first time it comes out, that's what it is. It's perfect in its first little iteration, if you will. So there's no reason for you to feel like you can't get it wrong. And so no one takes chances, no one takes risks, they don't put their personality into it. If they have a good, like I work with people with great senses of humor, and then when they get up and tell us about the thing they're doing, they don't use it at all. And I'm always baffled, and I don't want to like put them on the spot and be like, why weren't you funny?
Yeah.
But I want to encourage them because it's like, you're funny. Like, you're sitting next to me, you're cracking me up all day. Then we get in there and it goes away. And maybe that's stage fright. Maybe that's a lack of experience presenting. But everybody's got a good story. Everybody's got a sense of humor, even if it comes off in a weird way. It's just it's lowering the stakes. And that's what our show and our training, I think, and I hope do for people, is it says, look, you're giving a talk today, but it's not real. It's not a talk that matters. It doesn't go against your big quotas for the quarter or for the year. You're not going to get fired if you say the inappropriate thing. Let's just play in the world of presenting, because you have to present a lot. And the only time you do it is when you get up in these high stakes situations. As I was telling someone earlier today about this, it's the equivalent of, in the comedy world, the only time you rehearse your act is when you film the HBO special. Like, why would you ever do that? You got to work it out. You got to figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
Even if the works and what doesn't is a weird graph. It's a pie chart. That pie chart could use some punching up. Maybe another shade of pink would work well for that slice. Whatever it is.
More pie charts.
More pie. Just more pie. Just give me pie. And
pie
then
is
leave
good.
the slides at home.
Pie is great. Pie charts, not so much. I love what you said, because it's so true. It's like, it's that going back to the, you're so right. I see this happen every day where like you're totally having this great conversation, then all of a sudden the person that steps up to the stage is like Mr. Corporate, and you're like, well, who's that guy? Because I was just having a conversation with a guy that I actually really liked. I don't know who that person is. It is really interesting how I think, especially, and I think you make a really great point, which I want to reiterate, which is somehow in a high stakes situation, maybe because of the perceived risk, we somehow think that Mr. or Ms. Corporate has to take over and steer, versus understanding that a communication can still be high stakes, but you're still going to be a lot more compelling if you have a sense of play about it. And maybe it's maybe it's the psychological pressure we're putting on ourselves because we're telling ourselves the story of, I have to be perfect, it has to be great, it's high stakes, I can't fail. And maybe that's part of the issue, right?
No, it's a huge part of the issue. And I think a big part of it that we try to, help people with is you gotta like practicing. Like, they don't like doing, people are bad public speakers because they are afraid, and they're afraid because they're not prepared, and they're not prepared because they don't enjoy it. Yeah. And so if we can figure out a way for them to enjoy it, then they'll practice it more. And that's really what our show and our training is really about. It's like, look, the thing that you need to get better at is actually just getting in front of people and being yourself. It's not beholden or tethered to a particular deck or talk. It's more about you than the material. And you just have to find a way to just have fun doing it. And maybe the way to have fun doing it is doing a fake infomercial with your buddies, as opposed to doing a real, sales pitch. It's just a matter of like detaching the content, which is what I've always loved about improv. Everybody has their own adages and their own lessons they've taken, but one that I really like, or I apply, is that structure is a little more important than content, because we know some of the great improv formats, whether it be a long form or a short form game, that have existed for decades and decades. You can do that 1,000 times and it will always come out a different way, but the structure remains intact. And so if we tell people, look, when you're presenting, it's kind of the same thing every time. It's just different slides, different words. So how do you just kind of cycle through a bunch of those quickly, where they don't matter, where you're not really taking yourself seriously, where no one's judging you, and you can just get better through practice.
Yeah.
But people don't practice because it's not fun. So no one wants to sit around and do it because it's the worst thing they could think of. Like when people say, oh, I'm giving a PowerPoint presentation, you immediately fall half asleep as soon as they open their mouth. But we're trying to make PowerPoint presentations fun and cool and hip and funny and entertaining. It doesn't mean that we can always do that and everyone can do it, but
but we can dream, right? We can dream.
But we can at least show them. The show that's why the show is so important to even the training. And the training, both of them give the other side's credibility within our company. It's like, clients go, how are you going to make how can PowerPoint be funny? And we go, come see the show. Come 5 people do a fake talk and see what happens.
It's a great point. And I love the idea of just going in and having fun, because if you can detach yourself a little bit from the outcome, like who cares? Like you can't fail. If you're doing this for a show and you're getting good practice, you can't fail. Detach yourself from the outcome. You can take some pretty big risks. I did a show last night and 100% new material in my stand-up act. And usually I do 50-50.
100%?
100%.
Wow.
I usually do 50-50, and last night I was like, you know what? No, I'm just going to do 100%, because what's the worst that can happen? If stuff doesn't work, I'll know where to fix. I'll know what to rewrite. I'll know where my setup and my punchlines fail. I'll know. And so had never done that before, where I just 100% new material and didn't rely on old jokes. And it was actually really liberating, because there was no emotional investment in the outcome for me last night. I just went, you know what? How can I fail? I mean, if it doesn't work, at least I know, and I can always go back and rewrite or ditch it or whatever. But it was going in with that kind of mentality was like, meh. And it kind of helped me. I wasn't emotionally invested in any one joke and whether or not it did well at all.
Sure.
And I know it's hard, and it's easy to say and maybe harder for some people who maybe don't have that practice. And so I love the idea that you're just teaching people to play. And if you can just forget about, getting it right and perfect, just play and have fun and be present in the moment. Seems to me that's like a huge step. Like that could be transformational for people.
No, and I think it is, and I think that they're getting that from other places too, but that's definitely a big part of what we're trying to teach them. Yeah. And it's just about taking something that's so serious and not taking it seriously at all. Like I think in my experiences, like as an actor, the auditions that I made in my head, higher stakes, because it was, I really needed to book this commercial because it paid more than the usual thing. Maybe it was like a national commercial, and my mind starts darting to how much is it going to play, and am I going to get residuals, and how much money would that be, and that money would go toward these bills, and you go in and you bomb and you don't get it. And then if you go in and for some reason this always happens whenever I go in and I think like the specs show me that I'm not really the type that they're looking for. Or on paper, I already kind of discount myself and go, I'm not going to get this. They're asking for this whole other thing. And I go anyway, and because I'm so comfortable and relaxed and casual, I just do my best, whatever that's called for. I'm just present with it, which is all we're asking people to be. Yeah. And I end up getting a call the next couple hours that I booked the thing or whatever. And that never happens when I raise the stakes in my head. And so it's a crapshoot, any kind of performance like that. But it's just it's an actor example of like, look, performing is high stakes at all times. It's scary. It's even someone who's performed 1 million times gets sweaty palms and their heart races. I mean, we all get some kind of nervousness, even if that nervousness isn't physiological, and in your brain you're like, what's this going to get me, and where is this leading to, and is this opportunity the thing I should be doing, whatever. We go off on tangents in our heads. But if we can just go, look, it's just one little step in my career or my journey or whatever you want to say, and you just go, I'm just going to go up there and have fun. And that's another thing too, is we give people goals, because a lot of times we treat everybody's presentation like it's an actual, essentially like a one-person show or a monologue, whatever you want to call it. And we say, okay, what is your objective? Just like an actor, what is the objective and your scene partner is your audience, because you don't have a scene partner. So what are you trying to do to impact them? Yeah. Because usually they have no answer, or they say something like, well, I'm supposed to sell the product because today we're launching, and I need to not mess this up, and I want the product to be successful because that's my job. And I say, okay, yeah, but that's your like, professional goal. Like, what is your personal goal? Like, personally, if this was a show and had nothing to do with your job, what kind of show would you want this to be? Yeah. Do you want it to be funny? Do you want to scare the crap out of the crowd at the fact that this thing is happening and they need to make a difference? Like if you're trying to bring up some social awareness for something, are you trying to frustrate them? Are you trying to encourage them to get up and, is there a call to action where they're going to go and off and do something after you talk? Like, What is that?
Yeah.
And it's not rocket science, but a lot of people in these types of presentations, they're not thinking that way because one, they haven't been taught to, and two, they just don't have the time to really go through some of these steps. And that's where we come in. We go, look, we're not from your world. We're actors, we're performers, comedians, writers, directors, producers, improvisers. We have a process, and as Speechless, we have kind of a collective process. But I'm very happy to let everybody kind of like fly solo with their own versions of it when they're in the room with people, and just go, well, tell them the stuff that you do, and maybe it lands and maybe it doesn't. And if that doesn't work for them, here's our little grab bag of things that we like to tell everyone. Because they don't think of it that way. Just like if they came and saw me rehearse my stand-up act, they would probably throw out a bunch of different business tactics of how to promote that I would have never thought of.
Yeah.
We're just on different sides of the fence, but we can help each other. And I think in a lot of respects, the thing that, I mean, it really came down to me for how Speechless works is that I was doing a lot of corporate comedy, and I was doing a lot of corporate improv team building trainings because I've lived out in the Bay Area in San Francisco for 11 years, and I've always kind of dabbled with this, but I was finding a huge disconnect with what I was trying to get people to learn and apply and the thing they were actually doing. And in the last few years, that's been the difference. Is I just went, okay, let's cut out the middleman. A Whose Lines It Anyway game is very fun, and it's very applicable to what they're doing, but it's not in their wheelhouse. They don't know how to take a Whose Lines It Anyway game or the Herald and apply it to a business brainstorm. And that's okay. Maybe I couldn't do that any easier, even though I think I know how to explain it to them. So what are they doing that's closer to what we're doing? And I just started, as I started absorbing this world a little more, especially with the job that I had for a while, I just said, it's presentations. Presentations happen a gazillion times a day all over the world, and almost all of these people have to get up and do them. And whether they're sitting in a chair for 3 people or they're standing on stage for 1,500 at some, like the big Apple keynote that was literally yesterday, which I think was even more people than that, you have to get on stage and perform. It is a show. It's a big production with multimedia production value, even if the multimedia is just this little simple thing that we take for granted, which is, PowerPoint or Keynote or whatever you use. It's still this bigger thing than they make it out to be, and not like the stakes, but I want them to know that you're actually, for that little moment, you're a star, you're a performer. This is your show. And if you look at it that way, it might be more fun.
Yeah. Do you find that with technical folks, I'm curious, that actually might be a little bit more of a psychological impediment for them to kind of surmount, because they're, left brain, we're right brain people, and probably a mix of left as well, you and I, but for people that are very left brained, do you find that makes it more daunting for them or less if you say, look, you're a performer? I'm just curious your experience on that.
Well, it definitely depends on the person. I think that in a lot of respects, in general, I think it can make it less daunting because we after we say that, we take them through all the different things we like doing, which basically make the presentation more fun and less formal, right? And so we basically say, look, the world of a performer is, and you are a performer because you're giving a presentation, and a presentation is a show. That world is a world of experimenting and rehearsing and trying new things and being yourself and being playful and adding different people to the process to collaborate, which is, I think that's another thing to bring up that's huge, that I think that we try to bring from the world of the performer in, is that it needs to be a collaboration. How many of these people are giving presentations where their process is someone tells them to give a presentation on something or pitch something or demo something, they go to their chair, they go to their desk, they make up the slides, they spend 99% on making the slides look perfect, and then that 1% of the time, they kind of maybe put some notes in the little note field. That's their process. Then they get up and they read the slides, or they read the notes off of presenter mode, and that's the show.
Yeah. And
there's never anyone else in that process, not until they get in front of the audience. That's the high stakes audience they're performing in front of. Do they have any kind of feedback? So we're teaching them, look, maybe you should have a presentation or presenter partner. find another person who's on your team that also has to kind of pitch and demo and present the same types of things, and maybe has the same kind of like performance schedule, if you will. Like, oh, do you know, we try to match people up. We say, how often do you present? And they go, I give one big talk quarterly at these conferences. Okay, do you know anybody else in your team that does that? All right, you guys are a team now. You know, oh, I give like a weekly presentation every Monday, but it's still like a group of 8 people on this team. Okay, does anyone else have to do that? Oh, she does? All right, maybe you guys work together. And now maybe you guys can rehearse together, even if you rehearse once, you know, and you watch each other and give each other feedback. You know, we teach them ways to do that. That's a big part of it that's missing, is that presentations are really phenomenal in the fact that they're this solo performance art that is really, really, really ubiquitous on planet Earth. But for the most part, no one goes, hey, you want to Saturday night go watch a presentation? Like, no one's really like, nobody really enjoys this particular performance art, even though it might be the most ubiquitous one on Earth.
Yeah.
So let's make it better, and also let's have more fun with it, and also let's bring other people into it. It's so strange to me because, like I said, some of the people we work with, they present and perform all over the world, and at minimum they talk for maybe a half hour, maybe 45 minutes at minimum. That is, think about the stand-up shows that you perform in and I perform in. That's the maximum we're ever going to get. Unless you hit a certain level and a certain echelon in the comedy world, no one's going to let you be on stage for 45 minutes. And so that's just normal to them. And so it's this thing where you go, you're on stage longer than people who are professional performers. You were on stage yesterday longer than I've been on stage this month. And you still didn't rehearse, and you still didn't put any kind of like story and personal entertainment value into it. Even if have fun yourself, entertain yourself a little, and in turn that will kind of like ripple effect to the crowd. So it's a very strange, enormous world where people are basically all over the world getting up and doing one-person shows that are awful. and they're happening all day, every day. And no one's trying to make them much better, it seems.
I love that framing. No, that is a really interesting way to look at it, because I've never heard it in all the years that, you know, I've been speaking and stuff, but I've never heard anyone frame it that way. And I love that, because what you're talking about is such an important improv concept, you know, for those maybe who aren't familiar with improv. To me, it's really about what you said was so important. Your audience, you know, make your partner look good. We talk about that all the time, but your audience is your partner. And they're not there to be bored. So you're kind of breaking that fourth wall a little bit if you're interacting with your audience. And I love that you described the most ubiquitous form of solo show is the presentation. And it's so true. And I've never heard it.
Selling out for decades, ever since, like, I mean, people have been public speaking forever. But just mixing in presentation software, that's relatively new in the last few decades. But this idea of getting up and giving a public talk in a business setting has been going on forever and ever. It's just that people don't think of it as a show. But you're sitting there watching it, and in the back of your head, you're going, I hope this is good.
Yeah.
But you don't expect it to ever be good, which is why some of the decent to really great and inspirational TED Talks are so entertaining to watch, because you're like, oh my gosh, you can see the potential of this art form, and clearly people use, you know, presentations. So just like my show I was explaining that I did about the presidential election, people use slides and PowerPoint videos in their one-person shows and have been doing it forever and ever. So it's not like you can't use that stuff and make a really entertaining show, or that it's off the you know, grid and people just don't know that you can. It's just they're not having fun with it. They don't have the time to, and they look at themselves in a very particular way that no one expects this to be good, and no one ever else makes it good. So why should I?
You know, you said something again that just, for me, that's just so true. It's like the low expectations that we've all set, and we have made peace with, sadly, that we wouldn't. If you went to a comedy show, you'd want it to be funny. But if you went to a business meeting and showed up for a presentation, you don't go in with any high expectations. So if somebody marginally surpasses that low expectation, you're like, that was all right.
And that's how that person becomes kind of the one of the mouthpieces for their team, their company. And we find that all the time. We go and we meet these people that basically are the more, prolific speakers at their companies. Yeah. And not in any way to undermine what they're doing or knock them. What I'm saying is that we learn that they have just a wee bit more experience than the next person, but they're on a whole other level in the way that they're viewed, just because they, I don't know, like maybe say something up front in their talks that's a little bit more personal, or they use funny pictures in their slides. Like, they're not doing anything that's that hard and that no one else can do. It's just that they're doing it, and no one else is taking any kind of risks. And so that's what's so funny. And we always point to those examples when we meet people. We go, look, this person at this other company basically has your role, but they have this other role too, where they get all these other speaking engagements or do it on behalf of their company. And I think, obviously it's different every company, that really matters in terms of maybe compensation or this, at the end of the day, this actually does add up financially for people. Like, if you are a better speaker, you will progress through your career faster and go higher. And sometimes that literally translates to more money. And that's something that they all know, which is why they need people to come in and help them. And we're to hopefully give them ways to get there and practice, because everybody knows that if you could be a better public speaker and a better presenter, it would improve not just your job, it would improve your life. And like, I had someone today that's an old friend that I used to work with who Facebook messaged me about I think his son is 10, and he said his son is really shy and anxious in big groups. And he said he wanted me to help him with a couple pointers on how to talk, how to get more comfortable in front of people. And I sent him a couple little exercises that I think would be fun for his kid. And I said, but by no means is that the end all be all. Like, if those don't work or he doesn't like them, I'll send you a dozens more. But let's see how these go. And it's interesting because it's like, this is a child. He doesn't have some big quarterly report to give, but his father already sees that there's a little bit of a block in terms of his social progress. Like, I was shy when I was a kid, and I didn't really start coming out and being a little bit more of who I am personality wise until I started finding performance opportunities. I auditioned for the talent show or do this little school play. So yeah, everybody needs like some kind of, it's almost like going to the gym. Like, what's your little public speaking fitness center of sorts? Because no one is making that something that's easily accessible, because it's either somebody comes to your company and teaches you a workshop for one day, and even though I think we can make a huge impact on people, if you don't bring us back or you don't take the things we taught you and keep doing them, then it was just a fun half day off of work. It's not going to add up to anything.
Yeah, true. Absolutely true. And I was the same way. I was very shy, and then acting and stuff like that really kind of brought me out of my shell. And, I always have to explain to people, they're very surprised that, comics can be painfully introverted, and people are very shocked by that. But that's how a lot of people that are wired similarly tend to be. But I'm curious, in your experience, because since you've been doing this a while, what are the big lessons? What are the big presentation lessons that you've learned from doing Speechless? What are your big takeaways
in terms of actual presentations?
And actually, what you've seen work, how people transform. What are some ahas that when you went into this, maybe and first started this, maybe have surprised you?
Well, I think there's an exercise we do that's called Venspiration, which is just a portmanteau of Venn diagrams and inspiration, which I think that would be the thing that I would point to. Like, that is our logo. Like, our logo is a simple Venn diagram. It's just two circles and then the word speechless. And it also is an embodiment of how this show and company came to be because of my life. I was looking at myself and saying, I'm separated by these two careers and jobs that I have, and I don't feel like I'm the same person at both. I feel like I'm two different people. Yes. And so Speechless as a show came to be, like I was saying earlier, when I started to kind of take what was happening at my day job and turn it into some kind of creative, like a Rumpelstiltskin of sorts, and like spin it into creative, hopefully gold, but take what was there and make it into something different. And in this exercise we do with people, we say, okay, give us a short talk on something you would have to talk about at work, and we time box it, maybe do it for a minute or two, or maybe give us an elevator pitch about what you do for a living. That way there's something that they can hang their hat on. And then we say, okay, let's do the same thing, and now let's have you do it about something you're really passionate about outside of work. And usually it's night and day the way that those talks go. The one about the, that person kayaking or training for a marathon or being a parent is just so much more full of energy and life and vocal variety, and their gestures are much more engaging and a little almost animated. Wow. as compared to how they talked about what they do for a living. And then we start to marry the two. So we have the two circles and we just bring them together. We say, okay, now tell me about what you do for a living, but use the simile, blank is like blank. So if you're a sales executive, say being a sales executive is like being a parent, or it's like training for a marathon. And let's see how those two things can kind of play off of each other, and you can create your own specific little vocabulary about who you are. Because a lot of people at this company are sales executives. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people at this company or in this crowd might be training for a marathon or have some kind of fitness goal. And so people can relate to both of those individually. But how many of them are doing both of them? And maybe there's a pretty good number of that too. But if you can take your outside of work personality in life and attach it to your work personality in life and really kind of toggle back between both, then you're being yourself all the time. You're always the 100% version of yourself, as opposed to, well, at work I'm this person, and at home I'm not that person at all, I'm this whole other person. So that exercise, and we do it in a variety of different ways, but that's how we kind of started off. It's teaching people that they can bring their lives into their presentations and into their work environment, and no one is going to be upset unless they're being clearly inappropriate in some way, because all of us clearly can be a little not safe for work. But we're not telling them that's the answer. We're saying, look, everybody can be not safe for work and say things that are probably not going to make their HR rep really happy. We're not talking about that stuff. We're talking about stuff that's completely harmless, like you taught your kid sleight of hand magic tricks because you used to do magic in college. What? No one, does anyone here know that Joe used to do magic? And everybody goes, no, I thought Joe just sat at that desk and typed. It's like, we have these lives outside of our jobs, and a lot of us, are more of a work to live type person. You just do something so you can afford yourself the life that you want, and you have your family and friends and your hobbies. But we're just trying through exercises, improv games, and different things that we've come up with to teach people, like, bring a little bit of that into what you do. Okay, you love Star Wars. What if your entire presentation deck was designed to have the Star Wars font, and you were making analogies between what you do for a living and what this new product is, and maybe it's the Millennium Falcon of whatever you sell. Like, just have more fun with it. No one's going to be upset that you had fun with the presentation.
Yeah, no, things people on the long list of things people will never complain about is having more fun. I've never seen it happen, and I'm with you. I was going to ask you a great exercise people could do, and you answered the question. That's such a great, I love that idea of just really taking that passion, take what lights you on fire. It's such a great idea. And then overlay that into your work. So when you give a presentation, you're speaking from a place of personal passion. And we all love it when people's eyes light up and the person that they are outside of work, that happy person, shows up at work and delivers the presentation. We're thrilled. And I think it's such a great, I think, exercise that will help reduce, I think, that fragmentation where Ms. and Mr. Corporate person get up and do the delivery, because we don't want that person showing up. we want fewer of those showing up to do the presentation. So,
and something people don't really know or assume is that even when we work with people and we all have our own little things going on, and I'll be honest, I'm guilty of not knowing everything about everyone I work with, but that's true for everyone, because your teams, excuse me, change over so much, and your teams are too big to have personal friendships with everyone. But no one's going to get upset if they learn something about you. Like, that's another thing, is that it doesn't take very long, and it doesn't take much thought to actually add in layers of who you are. You could start by saying something as simple as the city you're from and relating that to a story about what you're going to talk about. Or, when I grew up in blank, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. You probably didn't know that, but now I say it. And just like we always tell people, and it's one of my favorite things to tell people, is like everything that people say is like a web page, and there's hyperlinks. What are you going to click on? If I say Birmingham, Alabama, do you have relatives there? Did you go there once on a road trip? Have you never been there and you have no idea why you should? Because you're like, what? That doesn't sound like a place to go. Or what's the big claim to fame there? Like everything that people say that's new information, people in their mind kind of click on it, and then it pops up something else. And if I say that's where I grew up, even if you don't want to talk about where I grew up because you have no interest, you're going to tell me where you grew up. And so it's the idea of like share more about yourself in your presentations, because in turn, that's the thing. We have to sit there and watch this presentation. You have to sit there and give it because it's part of your job. Well, it's part of my job to sit here and listen. And I'm probably not 100% listening. I'm just there. But you can pique my interest if I get a little bit about you, because I know all this other stuff because you sent me the 173 slides already. There's no reason for me to listen to you. So give me one. Give me a reason. And we always tell people, like, okay, your company sent you all the way to Buenos Aires to do this presentation. Why you? Why not her? And why not just send the presentation and have 2,000 people sit in the room and just go, okay, next slide. All right, just next slide. I finished reading it. Like, why is there an actual person there?
Yeah.
There's got to be a reason you're the person. So you have to figure that out.
Yeah. I love that. No, I think that's such great wisdom. The more you can just embrace your inner weirdo and the thing that makes you different, and the thing and weird is good, and I use it in this context as completely awesome because it's the thing that makes you light up, and bring that personality into the workplace. I think we'd all be better for it. I promised I would ask. Somebody asked me, "Hey, ask Sammy. How do you participate in a show at a speechless show?" So there you go.
How do you participate? So there's a few ways. One, you can just come to a show. Just look on our website for upcoming shows. We have one in San Francisco tonight, actually, but that's going to be really, really short notice. The next one is Friday, September 18th at the Improv Festival in San Francisco, and then we'll pop up in different cities at different times. And the way that you can be a part of that show by going to the show is volunteering. Like, we just take a volunteer straight out of the crowd. We have a new way of being a part of the show in San Francisco, not at the Improv Festival, but the next show in October. You can come to our open mic, which is called Crowdsourced, and people that go to the open mic participate, and then the audience chooses the winner. So there's no one that's going to stop you from being in that. So you can at least get some practice and see how it feels. And if you win the open mic through crowd applause, you actually go downstairs and perform in the big show. A third way is to just, it's the less impulsive way is just to email me, I guess, and send me why you think you would want to do it, and tell me a little bit about your performance and or presentation experience. If you have video clips, those are helpful, but they can email me at sammy@speechlesslive.com, and I can pass it along to our executive producer, Scott. Scott Lifton is the producer of all of our shows, and he can kind of go through the people that get recommended to us. And then the fourth way would most likely be take one of our classes to the public. We just started teaching kind of speechless classes like we've been doing at companies. We're now teaching them kind of in the public training center setting. And if you take one of our classes, that's one of the reasons we're doing that, is not only to help people get better at presenting at their jobs, but it's also a way for us to kind of develop and curate a talent pool for our shows, because we have a lot of people who have inquired about being a part of the show, and we're trying to figure out the best way to develop talent for the show to make the show as good as it possibly can be. So it'd be those ways. I think you can directly contact me, or you can take a class, or you can come to the show and volunteer, or you can be in the open mic. Those are the best ways.
Fabulous. And Sammy said, I guess, if you're in the city and you can go tonight, go. Again, September 18th is part of the San Francisco Improv Festival, which, boy, that's like, that's music to my ears, which is also with the Fringe Festival. So San Francisco is a lot of fun this time of year. And you can go to www.speechlesslive.com to check out all their different offerings. And Sammy, you got a Twitter handle you want to give out?
At Speechless Show is the Twitter handle for Speechless, and you can follow us on Facebook as well. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Awesome, Sammy. This was so much fun. I have to tell everybody I met Sammy at Funny Business, and I just fell in love with what he does. I think it's just an improviser's dream. It's funny. I told him the story about how I sat next to our mutual friend, Jason Miller from LinkedIn, who'd seen the show for the first time. And it was just joyful to watch people see it for the first time and not know what they were going to see, and then experience it. And just the pure joy of laughter that people had was just so much fun. So if you get a chance, everybody, please do check it out. It is a lot of fun. Sammy, and Sammy, I should just also say he's still in that newly wedded bliss. So congrats, Sammy.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Improv and Innovation Cafe. Everybody, thanks so much. Thanks, Sammy. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.